Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 2. So what I wanted to try to explain is that I actually had this idea, or this concept had actually occurred to me several years ago, that there could be another way to interpret this verse over here in Daniel 12. And I had actually calculated that that would actually cause the tribulation to only be 45 days long. If you think about it this way, if you add the two together, the daily sacrifice, from the time of the daily sacrifice, and if you notice the word and here, and the abomination of desolation, there shall be 1,290 days. So it had occurred to me several years ago that there could be a differential of 30 days between the daily sacrifice and the abomination of desolation, which would add up to the 1,290 days. So that means whatever happens here takes place 30 days before the abomination of desolation, and that makes the 1,290 days. And then from there you have, it says, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 335 days. And so I just want to show you what happens when you add the 1,335 days. Okay, so what I did first is I just tried to put May 14th, 2019, just to see what would come up. It wasn't quite the 1,335 days, but what I realized is that it's just 7 days off from that date. So just 7 days later from the anniversary of Israel becoming a nation would make the complete 1,335 days, starting from this new time period that was given to God's healer 7. But as I had said earlier in the last video, her time frame is actually through to April 6, which actually comes out to exactly 1,290 days. Now, what's interesting about April 6 is that according to the Hillel calendar, that would be the very first day of Nisan. So that is when the actual new year would begin according to the Word of God. Okay, so I'll talk a little more about that later, and how all 3 years come into play and how they seem to converge on that date. But first I want to explain how there's two ways to interpret this prophecy. Okay, so I just typed this up just to give an illustration. I didn't have it already typed, but I realized it's kind of difficult to explain or understand without a visual. But the normal way to understand the prophecy is that the daily sacrifice occurs first, and if you add 30 days to from the daily sacrifice to the abomination of desolation, if you add the two together, the 1,260 days and the 30 days, you come up with the 1,290 days. So you can break up this time period into 30 days and then 1,260 days, and then add 45 days after that to get to the 1,335 days. But like I said, what had occurred to me several years ago is that you could have the 1,260 days occur on the front end of this prophecy, and then add the 30 days leading up to the abomination of desolation, and then from the abomination of desolation until the end of the prophecy would just be another 45 days. So that would make the tribulation 45 days long. And that actually seems to be what has occurred. And when I had mentioned that several years ago, I didn't really think it would happen that way. It was just a suggestion, but it looks like that could be how the prophecy was meant to be interpreted. Okay, and so to fully understand how that could work, you really need to go back to verse 7, and this is actually a verse that I've talked about before, how it's a parallel to Revelation 10. Over here it has verses 5 through 7, and Over here you have Daniel 12 verse 7, and it's showing how it's basically representing the same imagery. Okay, but what I wanted to point out here is that it's saying, and I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that lived forever and ever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half, and when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. So on the surface it seems like this is the beginning of the time, times, and a half of time, but it's really just saying that there will be 3.5 years involved until all these things be finished. And I had talked about how this comes up in verse 7, and it's a parallel to Revelation 10 verse 7, where it says, but in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets. So I had pointed out before that the finish, or the end, comes here in verse 7, which represents 2017. Okay, then getting back to Daniel 12 verse 8, it says, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. And so it's interesting that the time of the end comes up in verse 9, but I had pointed out that Daniel is asking what shall be the end over here in verse 8. Okay, and I'll try to explain how these 3 years seem to converge on the calendar a little more later, but for now I just want to skip down over here to verses 11 to 13, where the angel gives a little more information and elaborates a little more on this prophecy. And you see over here that he's actually adding together the time of the daily sacrifice. He's saying from the time of the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination of desolation set up, there shall be 1,290 days. And the normal way to interpret this would be to add the 30 days to the 1,260 days to come up with a total of 1,290 days, but it could be that there was 1,260 days at the front end, and then the 30 days, which add up to the 1,290 days. But what I wanted to explain is why I believe the daily sacrifice could actually be referring to the rapture. That's something that hadn't occurred to me at the time. I didn't really know what was meant by having the daily sacrifice taken away. And I'll talk about this word taken away in the Hebrew in a second, but I just want to show you the word that's used in the Greek. In the Greek over here it says, and from the time of the, and I'll show you this word right here in the Greek. Okay, Strong's number 3883. This word is baralayi. It means a change, variation, mutation. Over here it says a transmutation, and it's used only one time in the New Testament, and that's in James 1:17, but I'll pull it up in the Blue Letter Bible so you can see the definition there. Okay, like I said, this word is used only one time. It comes up in James 1:17, and this is where it says, every good and every perfect gift is from above and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. And so if you look at this word, it's Strong's number 3883, and you see that it means variation or change, variableness or transmutation. Comes from these two words. It has the prefix bada, which means from, at, by, beside, or near. And then the root of the word is this word alasso, which means to change, to exchange one thing for another to transform. And it's interesting that this word is Strong's number 23:6, so you have the number 23 in there and 6, which is the number of man, but it's talking about changing or transforming, and it's only used that one time in James 1:17. So you have the 1:17 where it says every good and perfect gift is from above, which cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. And I had talked about this scripture before because this sounds a lot like the Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 17, which again looks like the year 2017. And this is where it said, until the day break, which means the dawn, until the dawn comes, and the shadows flee away, turn, my beloved, and be thou like a roe or young hart upon the mountains of Bether. Okay, and I could elaborate a little more on this verse right here as well, but this seems to refer to the transformation as well, where it says, be thou like a roe or a young hart upon the mountains of Bether. If I break this down, you would see that this also refers to the transformation over here and the breaking of the dawn or the new day. Okay, so when you look at this in the Greek, it's saying until the change comes, and from the time that the change or the transformation occurs, and in the Hebrew it says until the sacrifice be taken away, and the word sacrifice is not really in there, it just says daily. If you look at it here in the King James, you see that sacrifice is in italics because it was added in by the translators. That's not really in the text. So it says until the time that the perpetual is taken away, and this word taken away in the Hebrew means to turn aside, to depart, to be removed, to cause to depart, remove, take away, reject, taken away, removed, pluck away, to turn aside, go away, to depart. And so that's what it means, withdraw from calamity, to draw near, to cause to depart, to remove. And so that's what it means in the Hebrew. So it's basically saying until the perpetual departs. This word tamid just means the perpetual, the perpetuity, the continuously. So until that departs or is removed, and the abomination and desolation takes place, there will be 1,290 days. And then it goes on to say, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 335 days. And so this would represent an extra 45 days, which seems to represent the tribulation. And if you look at this in the Greek, it says blessed is, and I'll show you this word in the Greek. Okay, that's Strong's number 5278. It's the word ipomeno, and it means to stay behind, await, endure, remain behind, endure, persevere. So it's saying blessed is he who is left behind to persevere and waiteth. The word in the Hebrew means to wait, and cometh to the 1,335 days. So it seems to represent the tribulation in these 45 days. Okay, and if you add the 3.5 days that the two witnesses lie dead in the streets before they're resurrected, then that would come out to 48.5 days, which is really close to 49 days, which is what Tim Foster was talking about in this video. Okay, so this all seems to be adding up to this prophecy given by God's Healer 7, which ends on PURIM, which on the Hillel calendar lands on March 21st. That would be the 14th of Adar 2, and that would be just 1 month or 30 days before Passover. And that's about all I have time for. Thanks for watching.